All right, guys, I am excited to introduce my guest today. It's Brandon Turner of BiggerPockets, and he is an active real estate investor. He is the VP of Growth over at BiggerPockets.com, which just happens to be the biggest online resource for real estate investing, and they have a ton of great stuff. So if you are at all interested in real estate investing, I highly encourage you to check it out. So Brandon's been a real estate investor for a few years now. He'll get into that, but he's bought a bunch of real estate properties, and he's done a whole bunch of different things. And so I wanted to bring him on and just chat a little bit and see if he can shine some light and shed some light on this whole real estate investing thing, particularly for beginners. So if you're a beginner and this is something that's interesting to you, then this podcast or video, whatever we're calling this thing, should be for you. So without further ado, Brandon, welcome to the video.
Thank you, Bob. This is amazing. I don't know if I've ever told you this. This is actually a true thing. I discovered online entrepreneurship essentially because of you. Back a long time ago. Here's a story. So I Googled something about what was it? MediShare, right? I needed medical insurance. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Came across your site, was reading just thing after blog post after blog post, and somehow I just found out that people make money online. And you had an article or a blog post about how you make a living online.
Yeah.
And I was like, blown away so you were the very first
Wow.
for me, in learning on. Yeah. And then I read 4 Hour Work Week after that and all the other stuff that gets you excited. But yeah, you were my first.
Wow,
So,
I had no idea, and you saved that for the video.
Yep.
To reveal
I know.
it, so.
I wanted to throw that extra gear.
Just been hanging on to that. We meet each other at conferences, and you just keep it in the back.
Yep.
Just wait to unleash it. Well, cool.
Exactly.
Glad to be a part of that whole thing. So
Yeah. Well, thanks.
So anyway, I guess let's dive in and just kind of get going on some of this. So as far as the real estate investing, let me just make sure I got that right. So when did you get going?
Sure. I started when I was 21 years old. I'm 29 today.
29.
So,
Okay. So you've been at it 8 years.
yeah, 8 years now. Yeah. And I kind of started just by accident.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about that. So, I mean, how did you get into it? What made you decide? I mean, because every American has thought of real estate investing because it's everywhere. Everybody's talking about it, there's books about it, everything else. So what made you kind of step beyond that'd be nice to actually get in and do it?
Sure. So I had a friend who had a sister who was a real estate agent, and I went bowling with them. And I mentioned I was looking for a place to rent, and she said, "Well, why don't you just buy a house that's cheaper?" And I'm like, "All right, that sounds cool. Is that true?" So I looked into it, and I was raised by a mom who took us garage sailing every Saturday morning, for my entire life. So I knew one thing, and that was to negotiate for a good deal. That's the only thing I knew about real estate and about life was get a good deal. So I asked her for the cheapest house in my area, and I went and looked at it, and it was a wreck, and I bought it, and me and some buddies fixed it up slowly over about a year. And then one day, I'm sitting in this is terrible, but I'm sitting in church actually, and my mind's just kind of wandering, and had this thought of, I could sell my house and go backpack Europe for a year, and I was like, that's an amazing idea. So I finished the house really quickly, put it on the market, and then sold it, and I made $20,000, and it was fantastic. And I was like, I'm going to Europe. But then I got married instead, and so I spent all the money on the wedding. So I didn't actually go. But yeah, so that's what got me into real estate. It was that first success that I made a little bit of money on as a flip it was a flip, essentially, a fix and flip. And I thought, well, that was pretty fun. I should do that again.
Okay. So you've done that. You've flipped. Now you're typically doing a bit more with bringing in renters and owning the property. Is that correct?
Yeah,
and what other stuff have you done along these lines?
Sure. I've done, obviously I started with the flip, and then I did next, I did what I like to call house hacking. I think it's a term I'm trying to make popular in the US. So everyone start using that term, house hacking. Yeah. So I bought a duplex. And there were 2 houses on one lot. I bought them. I moved into one of them, and then the other unit we rented out. Okay. And we rented the other house out for $650 a month, and my total payment was $620 or something like that a month. Wow. Yeah, or $625. So I was living for free. Yeah. And I had to pay the water and the garbage, whatever, but minimal, $100 maybe for utilities, and I was living for free. And I thought, this is incredible. This is way better than flipping. Yeah. Right. What's 20 grand when you can live for free? Yeah. And so that would kind of sparked me into the idea of rental property. Yeah. And we found out later actually that house, because people kept taking photos of the house, drive by with their cameras and take a photo, and we didn't know why. And for years we didn't know why. And then we found out later it was the house that Kurt Cobain was born in. And so yeah, so he actually lived. Yeah, he lived in both houses when he was when between 0 and 6 months old, and then 6 months to 2 years. Like he was born in a hospital, but the
Yeah.
houses,
Yeah.
his first two houses were both halves of that duplex. So I'm the only person on earth that can say they own both of Kurt Cobain's, two houses. They own two houses of his. So yeah,
That's
that's how I
crazy.
got into rentals.
That's a fun little fact. So,
I know, is that funny?
okay. So for new investors, I mean, what do you recommend now? I mean, what do you suggest somebody who just wants to get in and just kind of do their first thing in real estate investing? I mean, is it the rental thing or flipping? I mean, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it really does depend, obviously, on the kind of person that they are and where they're at in life,
Okay.
obviously. I do like the concept of the house hacking, and both things I did really were house hacking, right? The first one was like a house hack flip,
Hmm.
the idea where I bought a property and then fixed it up while I was living there, sold it, and made some equity, and then I can roll that over to another project
Yeah.
or get married, right?
Yeah.
That's the flip house hack or live and flip or a flip in they call them. The other side of it was a rental. So I think those two strategies, like both sides of the house hacking coin, are an incredible way to start because not only do they give you a free place to live if you buy a good, I mean, yeah, you got to buy smart. You can't just buy anything, but if you do it right, you can potentially live for free or for cheap. And it
Yeah.
also gives you like on the job training, right? That you would never get. I mean, if you go buy a rental property, you're jumping in, with both feet. But at least when you kind of house hack, you kind of get to ease your way into it and
Yeah.
to learn and make
Yeah.
mistakes while you're there.
I like that.
Yeah, it's huge. Like, what do you do when the tenant, has a problem in the middle of the night, their toilet breaks in the middle of the night, which everyone talks about that happening. I mean, I've got, quite a few rental properties now, and I've been doing this for 8 years, and I've only one time in my life had a middle of the night phone call, and it wasn't even necessary. I walked over there and I shut her water off. Like, I mean, like just I turned off she was doing dishes at 2 in the morning, turned her water off at the sink and said, I'll come back tomorrow. Because it was just like a pipe,
Yeah.
came undone. And I'm like,
Yeah.
just shut off your water and go to bed. Whatever. So anyway, by house hacking, yeah, you kind of get to ease your way into it a little bit. And I mean, the loans to get a homeowner, like a primary residence, are so much easier than trying to buy an investment property.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so very few people know that like you can buy a single family or a 2 unit or a 3 unit or a 4 unit, all the same thing. The government sees them all, like the banks and the government see them all as the same thing. So,
Okay.
yeah, so you can get a loan on a fourplex, and they don't see it any different than a single family house, except for the
Gotcha.
fact that you get all that bonus rent. So,
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. That's
yeah.
really good information. So as far as getting a loan as an investor,
Mhm.
you're looking at what is it, 20,
Yeah,
25%
20, twenty five
down?
percent down. Yeah, from a
Okay.
bank. I mean, like I don't do a whole ton of bank stuff just because you have to have 25% down, and most
Yeah.
people don't have that.
Yeah.
Granted, I wish I always had 20% down for every property, but I don't. So I,
Yeah.
try to get more creative than that. But yeah, I mean, when you're a homeowner, like you can usually get 3.5% down, which is called an FHA
Yeah.
loan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got $100,000 property, it costs you $3,500 to buy a fourplex, or I don't know if you can find a fourplex for 100 grand, but
Yeah.
just using those easy numbers, and yeah, it's really a low cost way to get your own house and get in cheap.
Okay, so talk to me about the whole buying with no money down. This is something everybody hears, and I'm sure you
Yeah,
get asked about it all the time. So just tell us, what's the deal? What's up with it?
yeah.
Yes or no?
Yes. I mean, you definitely can do. I mean, I don't think I've really ever put any money into anything I've ever done. So everything I've done has been no money down.
Okay.
That doesn't mean none of my own, like, doesn't mean no money was involved. Every time it does. So the idea with no money is kind of like this. You have to pay something. So whether or not you're paying cash or you're paying sweat equity by going and working, or but whether you're paying, by sacrificing equity later on or sacrificing a portion because you split with someone else. I
Yeah.
mean, for example, I've done this a number of times. I found like a partner who wants to get in more than the 2% they're getting off their, bank CD.
Yeah.
And so they'll say, hey, you want to invest in real estate together, Brandon? I say, sure, you put the down payment, we'll get a loan, and then I'll manage the property. So I don't do anything money wise, but I do, manage the whole thing beginning to end, the project, make sure everything's done right. And
Okay.
then we split it 50-50 later. So I'm still paying something. So the idea of no money, no stress, no problems, that's not real. But
Okay.
there are, I mean, there's dozens of creative methods you could do to do it
Gotcha.
with little or no money down.
So how common is that, this type of arrangement that you got where you find an investor? Is that fairly common? I mean, is that something that in your forums you have people hooking up, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean that's quite a bit. I mean, a lot of people in the forums on our site do that. I've generally found most of mine. I mean, most of mine have been from people I know. I mean, the best lenders and the best partners, I think, are people that you know, obviously, because you need to know if you can work with them.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, I've partnered with my parents, I've partnered with my wife's parents, I've partnered with friends from church, I've partnered with a guy I met on the site who we became good friends, and he just lent me. For example, I mean, I found a fiveplex that was listed at 120,000. It was real cheap compared to most, fiveplexes would be. And I offered him 90, and the bank took it. And I said, great. So now I need to come up with 90 grand. So I call up my buddy, and I'm like, hey, I know you lend out private money from time to time. Would you want to lend this? He's like, yeah, no problem. How much you need? I'm like, 90,000. It's like, sure. So yeah, I pay him 12% interest, which is crazy high interest. But I'm working on a refinance right now through a bank, and it gets a little more complicated. But essentially, there are ways to be creative and to do it with little to no money down. Now,
Gotcha.
yeah, is that a good idea? That's a whole different conversation. I mean, the less money you put in, technically, the higher your payment would probably be. Like, I'm paying him a ton. So,
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Good information. So talk to me about finding a good property, and we're gearing this whole thing towards the new investor, the one, buying their first property. How do you, and I know this is, you could talk for days on this, but how do you find a good property? Are there any rules of thumb that you follow? Is there any just kind of good foundational advice you have?
yeah, there is. So the first thing I do, I mean, I kind of look at property shopping as like a funnel, you might say, where it's wide on the top and it gets narrower,
Yeah.
or like a filter, like you're filtering water. There's different levels. So the first thing I look at is location. I mean, right, you screen out location, you drop. I mean, worldwide, you got 1 billion houses for sale, and you drop down to your town, you got 3,000. Okay, so you filter that, and then you want neighborhoods, and now you're down to 1,000. Then you're down to 500. So you can do that pretty easily. If you have a real estate agent, they can do that. If you're just using like realtor.com or Zillow.com, you can do that. And then after that, there's a couple of rules of thumb that are really, really helpful for quickly screening properties. And I'll try to explain these in like the easiest way possible. So the first one is called the 50% rule. And I really like this because it's worked out so true in my experience. And this is what it says. It says that over time, 50% of whatever comes in goes out in expenses. And then that's not including the mortgage. So let's say that a property rents for $1,000 a month. That's what comes in is $1,000. Take that and just divide it in half. 50% gone. Okay. Now you got $500 left. If your mortgage payment, just your taxes, just your principal and interest, if that's $300, then you could expect $200 a month in cash flow.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's it's not necessarily exactly right. Sometimes it's 55, sometimes it's 45. The larger properties might go up to 60. Those single family houses might go down to 40, but generally 50 is just a good number to use.
Okay.
And say, because here's what a lot of people do. Here's the mistake that I've made it. Everyone's made it that gets into real estate. They look at a property and say it rents for $1,000 a month. My mortgage is going to be, $300 a month. Boom, I'm making $700 a month in cash flow.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo, and they do the little happy dance. And then they forget that there's, taxes, insurance, and water and utilities and special stuff. Yeah, maintenance and repairs and vacancy and what's called CapEx. Those are like, the roof needs to be replaced every 10 years or 20 years. Let's say you make $100 a month and 20 years later, you got a $20,000 roof to put on. I don't know what that math is, but essentially you just made nothing, right? So if you don't plan for those big things, you just make absolutely nothing. So
yeah. Okay. Good advice.
So yeah, that's first rule of thumb. The second one that is a little more, I'm not going to say like shady because it's not shady, but what's the word? Like, it's not as accurate, maybe is the word, but it's still helpful. It's called the 1% or the 2% rule. And people call it both ways because it depends on what your criteria is. It just says this. If your property rents for $1,000 a month and it costs $100,000 to buy, that's 1%, right? Because whatever the monthly rent is compared to how much the purchase price is. So 1,000 based on $100,000 purchase, that's 1% rule. If it rented for $2,000 a month and you bought it for $100,000, that's the 2% rule.
Okay.
So typically, personally, I use that a lot because if I'm just seeing a whole bunch of properties, I can just run real quick in my head, like, this one meets the 1%, this one meets 1.5, this one's 1 3/4, this one's close to 2, this one's 2.5, whatever. I can do those pretty quick in my head. Anything under 1%, in my experience, will never produce any extra income. You'll lose money every month.
Okay.
I have one property right now that my loan's for $80,000. I rent it for $800 a month, so it's 1%.
Yeah.
And I lose money over time.
Yeah.
because just the maintenance happens, vacancy happens, whatever. Over time, I lose money,
Gotcha.
and that sucks. So
Okay, so if you have $100,000 house and it's only going to rent for $700-800, it's not even worth considering, in your
yeah,
opinion.
I would probably just assume it's going to lose money.
Gotcha.
Now, there are reasons you may want to do it. I mean, I personally wouldn't, but there are people that they invest for appreciation. It means property going up in
Yeah.
value. So is it worth losing $200 a month if 5 years from now the thing's worth $200,000 more? Well, sure. But I mean, appreciation, in my opinion, is the icing on the cake. I never invest for it.
Gotcha.
I invest hoping for it, but I never invest for it, if
Gotcha.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, and I've heard that too from what I've read about it all. So,
Yeah.
so what do you recommend as far as techniques or strategies, or just maybe even more general rules of thumb? And I guess you kind of touched on this, but how does a new investor minimize their risk getting
Sure.
involved in this?
Well, I think step one is getting educated, and not like those, like late night TV guys that are, join my $9,997 course, and then you can join my coaching program and then my mentor. Like I'm talking about like real education, like through. I mean, honestly, things like this, like people are listening to this podcast. Obviously, they're on a good or video or whatever they're doing here. They're on a good path, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of good resources out there. I mean, when I got started, I went and got every book from my local library on real estate investing, every single one they had in the whole system. It was over 100. And I just read one after another after another. I just like burned through one a day for a whole summer.
Yeah.
And I learned so much stuff. And then just meeting with other real estate investors that's kind of our big push on BiggerPockets is, hey, this is grassroots education. I mean, why would I want to learn from a guy who's going to teach me how to handle tenants who hasn't dealt with tenants in 20 years? I mean, I want to talk to a guy who has tenants today, who just dealt with an eviction yesterday, and he's going to tell me what he did, so I'll know what I can do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of my idea, is if you can find good people that are doing what you want to do, there's that famous quote from, I think, Jim Rohn that says, you are the average of the 5 people you associate with the most. And then Tim Ferriss talks about it in 4-Hour Work Week. Yeah, I love that. So if you can make 1 or 2 of those people who you want to associate with, make them a real estate investor like you want to do, it's a good way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's really good. Okay, so talk about, like we were just talking about with the toilet going bad in the middle of the night.
Sure.
And I mean, I think I might know your answer based on the little bit of conversation we had there, but talk about property managers. And is that something that you'd recommend for a new investor, or what do you think?
Yeah. So I manage my own properties. My wife does.
Well, actually, hang on. We should probably maybe we should clarify what a property manager is and does.
Sure. That'd be great. I can do it. So a property manager is somebody who actually I mean, there's a lot of that they can do and won't do. You can decide on that. But my dog running around in the background. So they basically will manage the property, manage the tenants, so you don't have to talk to the tenants. You don't have to deal with them. So they'll collect rent. They will show the unit. They'll get it filled. They'll screen the tenant to make sure they're good. They'll answer phone calls. They'll schedule maintenance. They'll do pretty much everything that you don't want to do, and you just get a check in the mail every month, or you get a bill in the mail every month, depending on how good the property is. Property managers typically charge anywhere between, I'd say average is 8 to 12%. In my area, they charge 10% of whatever the rent is. So if the rent's for $1,000, they cost $100 a month, which isn't terrible. And then furthermore, they will charge like 50% sometimes, or a whole month worth of rent when they rent a unit out. So they get a big chunk up front, and then they get 10%. So it's a large expense. So what I recommend people doing, if they want to use a property manager, that's great. I mean, just make sure either way, budget for one. And I nobody told me this when I was getting started, and I wish they had. And this is kind of like a mind thing more than it is a budget thing. But when you budget for a property manager, it makes it a lot easier to hand it over to property management someday, because nobody wants to be a landlord for the next 40 years. I mean, if you're successful with real estate, which you probably will become if you're good at this, it's easy to manage 1 property, 2 properties, 3, 4, but then you get 10, you get 15, 20, 50. Like at one point you can't manage anymore on your own. Well, what do you do? Like if all the money you were making in cash flow was actually just getting paid for the job of property management, you hand it over, now you're making no money.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my early properties now, like if I were to hand my stuff over to property management, I wouldn't make any cash flow anymore on them. That's miserable. So I'm just kind of stuck managing a lot of them because I didn't buy them with that good of enough deal, because I was buying a job, not buying an investment.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you go either way. Just make sure you get a good enough deal that justifies the cost of one, and budget for it either way.
Okay. Well, okay. So along those lines, I mean, that's one of those things that you wish you would have known when you started.
Yeah.
What else? I mean, if you're looking back to your younger self when you were 21, getting started in all this, what do you wish you would have known?
Uh, I wish I would have connected with more like real estate investors like I do today, like hanging out with them, like I said
Mm-hmm.
earlier, like online or in person. I think I would have avoided a lot of mistakes that I made. I mean, I kind of am a, shoot first, ask questions later kind of a guy, right? So I just
Yeah.
I'm gonna buy this house, and then I did it, and then I'm like, oh no, what did I do? And so I would probably do that. I would probably listen to people more often. I mean, a lot of people have said like, I had one guy tell me, no, I'm not gonna lend on this deal. It was a lender, and he said, I can't lend on this. I don't think it's that good a deal. And I pushed anyway, and I went and found another lender, and I pushed and I pushed, and I got it. And in the end, I worked for a year fixing it up myself, me and some friends and some guys we hired. 12 months straight of working on it, 12 months of sitting on the market trying to sell it, and in the end, I broke even. And like I look at that, and I'm like, why didn't I just listen to that guy? Like, he obviously does this more than me.
Yeah.
Why didn't I listen to him? So that's a pretty big lesson
So,
of. So
okay. So how does, talk to me about how the Bigger Pockets community can help a new investor as far as making these connections in your forums and things like that.
Sure. So, I mean, when people join the site, we have a few hundred people a day join the site, and they come on, and a lot of them will leave like a new member introduction. It's called. You just basically say, "Hey, I'm new here. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Nice to meet y'all."
Yeah.
And you'll get a couple dozen people to jump in and be like, "Hey, welcome. Glad to have you here." So that's kind of a nice way just to meet some people that are interested in you.
Yeah.
Furthermore, when you say like, "Hey, I'm from Seattle," or "I'm from Orlando," or whatever. Other people have what's called like keyword alerts. Like they get notified of certain keywords that are mentioned. So like every time somebody says Seattle on the forums, I jump in and say, "Hey, welcome," because I'm in the Seattle market. I want to know who you are. I want to build a relationship with you.
Yeah.
So that's a good way just to meet people.
Uh-huh.
Furthermore, just every time you have a problem, I mean, like real estate is not black and white. I mean, books are black and white, but real estate in real life is not.
Yeah.
I had a tenant a couple months ago who threatened. Let's see, she almost burned down her property because she was smoking outside, and she threw it in a box and burned a big thing. Claims it wasn't her. Said it wasn't her that did it, even though she smokes and there's her cigarette butts all around it. She said, I didn't do it. So when we billed her for it, she said, I'm not paying that. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, what do I, like, do I force her? Like, how do I deal with that? I had no idea. You can't just go into, like, you can't go to a book and look that answer up.
Yeah.
It's never been written before in a book. So that's what I did. I went on the forums. I think I got 100 people to say, here's what I would do. And I mean, most people are like, bill her anyway, and if she doesn't pay, I kick her out. And we ended up evicting her later, and she ended up threatening to sue, and like it was just a mess. But every step of that, I went on and just asked people, hey, what would you do in this case? I'm stuck. I don't know what to do, and I still do
Yeah.
that to this day. I ask questions all the time.
Yeah.
So
That's really
yeah, so
good.
that's probably the best way to do it. Is just it's just to get involved and ask questions because we like there's yeah, I don't know. We've all been there. Like there's nothing new under the sun in real estate.
Yeah.
Like it's all been done before. Somebody's dealt with that stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I feel like it's the same in business in general. It's like, I mean, my business, it's the same thing. It's like, I can't tell you how many times I've had to go ask other people or Google this or whatever
Yep.
to find an answer because there's so
Yep.
many, you can only see so far down the path. And then you get a
Yep.
few steps down and you see the new problems and you just, keep moving, overcoming, figure out how to do it. But anyway, okay, so of the 100+ books you read at the beginning and everything you've read since, what are some of the best resources, tools out there for someone to begin their education who wants to get started in all this?
Sure. So I probably have the book sitting around. But anyway, I mean, there's one book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is everybody says that's their first book they read that gets them
Yeah.
excited about real estate.
Yeah.
Even though it's not even, I don't even think he mentions the word real estate in the book. It's not about real estate, but for some reason, we all like gravitate to real estate after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad because it's about just assets and
Yeah.
it's changing the way you think about money. So Rich Dad Poor
Exactly.
Dad was really good. I think you need to be foundationally like solid in your personal finances, obviously. So reading personal finance blogs like your own and things like Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, that helped me a lot kind of get on budget and figure out what I was doing. There's a book called The Unofficial Guide to Real Estate Investing by a guy named Spencer Strauss. It's just an old book that came out like 20 years ago or 15 years ago. I thought it was one of my all-time favorite books.
Okay.
You can get it on Amazon for like $1, and it's just really good on building a long-term buy and hold thing. We have a free book on BiggerPockets. It's you don't no opt-in or anything. It's just biggerpockets.com/UBG, which is Ultimate Beginner's Guide. So it's just like a 9-chapter online book. You can just read how to kind of get started, kind of like the big picture. Like if you're like, I have no idea what to do, how to get
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
This will kind of be a good way to get started.
Great.
And yeah, so hopefully that'll help some.
Great. Well, this has been awesome. I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but I really appreciate you coming on. And I think we got some helpful tips in here. And so thanks for being here.
I'm happy to. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.